Hello and welcome to the video version of the lecture Media and Everyday Life. I'm David Gauntlet from the University of Westminster. The title is Media and Everyday Life, but really I'm going to be talking about the changing place of media in everyday life. There have been certain changes in the past 10 or so years to media consumption which make it a bit more interesting and different to before. Speaking of before, we might picture it something like this. Some people sitting around a radio set looking at the radio times wondering what's going to be on and when, or some people queuing up for an 8 o'clock showing of a movie at a cinema. You'll have noticed the importance of time here, schedules set by the media which people, the public media consumers, have to respond to and shape their lives around. Also psychologically that means that the media has a kind of dominant role, making people somewhat more passive and subservient because they have to fit their lives in around the media. In the past also, to create media you needed big stuff, big recording devices, big cameras, and if you wanted to distribute it all you needed a big broadcasting company or movie studio. That's not easy. Most people don't own these things and therefore couldn't do it. These days, of course, we can produce and share media using small and reasonably cheap devices such as laptops or even mobiles. That work ends up on sites like YouTube, where the work of many thousands of directors is seen by literally millions of people who look at their homemade videos where people just typically talk about their lives and stuff that's happening to them and manage to gain a large audience. That's now. Before, it was more like this. The media were like gods up in the heavens, distributing their stuff to the little people down below who had very little control. It was like media was handed down from on high, both in terms of how and when you could get it, and also in its general tone and attitude. If we look back at that picture of Broadcasting House, you'll see it looks pretty much like a church, big, powerful, solid building with a steeple. Newspapers in the past used to be big and authoritative looking. Even record companies had their own big, solid buildings commanding the skyline. These days, it's not so much like that. But in the past, the media sent down their messages in this one way, from them down to us. In short, it looks pretty much like that. You've got a broadcaster sending out its messages to the world. These days, it's not like that. There are websites like YouTube, MySpace, Wikipedia, where all of the content is provided by the users and then is distributed very widely to other diverse users around the world. There is still, of course, competition from the big media corporations, so we have to stick them on as well. All of this is helped along, of course, by Web 2.0. My simple explanation of Web 1 and Web 2 is that Web 1.0, if we want to call it that, was like people creating their own separate little gardens, separately from each other. Web 2.0 is everybody contributing to the allotment that we all make together. That was the idea that Tim Berners-Lee had in 1991 when he invented the World Wide Web. He thought that everybody would be contributing to sites. But for many years it didn't really work like that, and it wasn't even clear how it could work like that. But nowadays, in the past year or so, the idea of Web 2.0 has become much more accepted. People contributing collectively to a sum of knowledge that exists online. So that's Web 2.0. If we want to picture how these changes have taken place, it's not really like this. There wasn't the traditional place of media that I talked about at the start, which has suddenly been replaced by these new uses of the media. Instead, the traditional uses have been slowly joined by these new uses that I'm talking about. In a book called TV Living, which tracked people's media consumption over 5 years from 1991 to 1996, and people kept diaries about their media consumption, one of the key themes we found was the theme of time. People were overwhelmingly conscious of time. Their personal schedules had to be built around the media schedules, and the amount of time they spent watching TV was also significant to them. They felt kind of guilty, but they didn't mind too much. And changes of their lifestyle over time were reflected in changes in their media consumption. These things will have changed, but to what extent? Today we see news stories reporting that people are watching television less and are online more. This story finding it surprising that women are spending even more time than men online. This story reporting that TV viewing is dropping and being replaced by people spending time online. The way we understand and consume politics now is changing, perhaps in the YouTube era, where For example, here a Barack Obama speech has been turned into a music video, which has helped to rally support for him, and the famous "I'm in Love with Obama" song from Obama Girl helped raise awareness and support for Barack Obama, seen here making his own presentation of his plans for 2008 on YouTube. Hillary Clinton has had to follow suit. She's been made fun of in some videos. She's making her own official videos where she states her policies. Gordon Brown also appears on the 10 Downing Street website, normally being quite dull. He gets made fun of in other videos for being quite dull. Finally, in this book by Richard Sennett, which has just been published, The Craftsman, less sexistly craftsperson, he talks about the idea of the craftsperson being engaged with their work and wanting to do good work. A craftsperson typically takes 10,000 hours to master the thing that they do. So it's spending time and taking pride in your work to make something. Sennett suggests that craftsmanship leads to a sense of well-being and self-esteem. And maybe we're seeing with the rise of YouTube and video sharing and photo sharing sites and other sites where people make things and put them online and share them with other people, we're entering an era where there's this pleasure in making things is having a real resurgence. So there was only recently a dip in the 20th century where people had to consume media made by other people. Nowadays we're getting back to more of a folk culture where people can make and share their own stories with other people. You can read a summary of Sennett's craftsman argument by typing Sennett craftsman into Google and reading the Guardian article there and some other reviews. So that's the end of this little video. I hope it worked. Sorry about any clunky little edits, and I'm done. Thank you.